Welcome everyone to the NetCore Conf 2021. The title of this talk is Battle Royale, Azure Logic Apps versus Power Automate. We would like to thank our sponsors. Without their support, the conferences like this are not possible. Who am I? My name is Prashant G. Bhoyar. I was born and raised in India. I came to United States back in 2007 for studies. I'm University of Maryland College Park alumni. I co-authored a book, PowerShell for Office 365. I also acted as a technical reviewer for the book Pro SharePoint 2013 Administration. I am from Washington DC area, and pre-COVID-19 pandemic, we used to organize a lot of in-person conferences in the Washington DC area. Post COVID-19 pandemic, we have converted all our conferences to virtual only. So if you are interested in joining us, we periodically post the information about upcoming conferences on meetup.com. So here I will see I have provided the link to the 3 meetups. And we are planning a global Azure AI and ML Fest conference somewhere in July or August this year. I am recipient of Antarctic Service Medal, and since 2017, I am also recipient of Microsoft Most Valuable Professional Award or MVP award. Now, those of you who are not familiar with this award, so I don't work for Microsoft. It's just the additional recognition that Microsoft gives out to the folks who does technical contributions in various product areas. And these technical contributions can be in the form of speaking at the conferences, writing blog posts, answering people's questions on various public forums, creating training contents, providing direct feedback to the Microsoft product group. And this award is valid for 12 months, and after 12 months you have to submit your contributions from previous 12 months. If your contributions are good enough, then Microsoft may award you for additional 1 year. So I'm getting this award since 2017, and for first couple of years I was an MVP in Office 365 apps and services, and since 2019 I changed my category to AI, and currently I work as a senior solution architect with Witham. Witham is an advisory, audit and tax firm. We are based in USA, and we have office in Bangalore, India as well. And I focus on intelligent business process automation, where I use variety of the products and services out there. For example, in Microsoft Stack I use Azure AI, bots, cognitive services, Microsoft Power Platform, Microsoft 365, SharePoint, Microsoft Teams, etc. As I mentioned, I am from Washington DC area, and I worked at Witham's Washington DC office. This is the quick information about our company. We have done 100 plus Microsoft Cloud deployments. We have 2 Microsoft MVPs on the staff. We have 50 plus consultants dedicated to Microsoft ecosystem only, and we are Microsoft Gold partner from last 17 years. And these are some of the capabilities that we have. We have digital and modern workplace solutions. We have managed services. We have business process automation, application modernization, Microsoft Cloud advisory and strategy, and we also have a one window turnkey intranet solution as well. As I mentioned, if you are interested in joining us for the future events, definitely check us out on meetup.com. We periodically post the latest and greatest information about upcoming conferences on meetup.com. So let's take a look at the agenda for this talk. So we will start with Power Automate. Just in case if you're not familiar with what Power Automate is, I will give you like a 2-minute introduction of what Power Automate is. I will also give you a 2-minute introduction of Logic Apps, and then we will dive deep into the key differences between these two products. We'll also talk about how we can extend Microsoft Flow and Logic Apps into Logic Apps. We'll talk about best practices, demo, key takeaways, and Q&A. I know this session is going to be posted live on YouTube, so in case you have any question, feel free to post those questions in the chat of the YouTube live, or also there is another program that the conference is using. I will be also available there to answer if you have questions. Now with that, let's talk about what is Microsoft Power Automate. Now let's see what Power Automate is. Power Automate is a part of Microsoft Power Platform. Microsoft Power Platform is a low-code platform that spans Office 365, Dynamics 65, Azure, and standalone application. One of the most popular product or the early product of Power Platform is Power BI, which is used for business analytics. We have Power Apps, which is used for application development. Power Automate is for workflow automation. And Power Virtual Agent is the newest member of Power Platform product, which is used for intelligent virtual agents. And the underlying data store is Dataverse. Its previous name is CDS or Common Data Service. And there are other data connectors available as well. And last year, Microsoft also added the support for AI Builder, where AI Builder under the hood uses Azure AI services. However, it gives you an additional layer where you don't need to, where you can consume a lot of AI capabilities directly into the Microsoft Power Platform. So this is the brief information about Power Automate. It gives you an holistic end-to-end intelligent automation platform. And this is the Power Automate vision, where the vision is the people should only have to focus on tasks where they can bring unique human values. And these are the four Power Automate value pillars are automation at scale, seamless secular integration, accelerate productivity, and intelligent automation. When it comes to Power Automate, more than 300 app connectors are available. You can also create your own custom connectors as well. And in this app connectors, these app connectors also include the on-premise applications as well. There's a big list of template libraries available where you can either start creating Power Automate from blank, or you can also take advantage of all various templates that are available depending on what kind of automation you would like to use. Now let's take a look at what are the Logic Apps. So Logic Apps is a cloud service that helps you schedule, automate, orchestrate tasks, business processes, workflows when you need to integrate apps, data system services across enterprise or organization. It's a de facto workflow engine in Microsoft Azure. It's based on serverless principle. It can scale automatically to meet the demand. It allows developers not to have worry about building, hosting, scalability, availability, and management. And just like Power Automate, there are many connectors are available across cloud and on premises, and everything begins with a trigger. So let's take a look what are some of the key concepts of Logic Apps. So we will have a workflow where Logic Apps provides a graphical way to model our business processes as a series of steps. We will have managed connectors, we will have triggers, we will have action, and we also have enterprise integration pack. Just like Power Automate, Logic App has similar triggers, like we can have Logic Apps trigger on a schedule. We can also have Logic Apps trigger on an events like create, update, and delete it. And this is how the Logic Apps workflow definition will look like. Now, if you compare the description of Power Automate and Logic App, it sounds similar. The reason for that is there is a relation between these two products. Now, let's take a look what that relation is. So here I will talk like how Azure Logic Apps and Power Automate are connected to each other. So Azure is Microsoft public cloud offering, and Logic Apps is the workflow engine in Azure. And when Power Automate or Microsoft Flow was launched 5 years before, the product has a lot of similarity with Logic Apps. In fact, Power Automate or Microsoft Flow is built on the top of Logic App. Under the hood, it uses the same kind of runtime like Logic Apps. Over the course of time, some new features got added in the Power Automate. That's why if you look at now, you'll see some overlap of the features that are common to both Logic Apps and Power Automate. And also each product now it has its own unique feature set as well. So when it comes to the overlap, the designer is pretty much identical for Logic Apps and Microsoft Flow or Power Automate. A lot of actions are identical or pretty much the same. The triggers are also the same. Now, over the course of last 4 years, Power Automate has also added its own features that are only available in Power Automate. Those are business process flows, UI flows, Power Automate desktop, and additional actions like SharePoint approval. Behind the scene, when you run, whenever your flow get executed, behind the scene, it still uses the Logic App runtime. So now let's take a look at some of the key differences between the Power Automate and Logic Apps. So number one, Logic Apps is a part of Azure Group, whereas Power Automate is part of the Business Applications Group or the Dynamics Group or the Power Platform. Now the reason I have this slide here because in future slides you will see why like I have mentioned like how there is a really good integration story available between Logic Apps and other Azure services, and similarly there is a really good integration story available with Power Automate and other Power Platform products. The reason we have that because these two products are part of the different groups. Logic App is part of the Azure group, whereas Power Automate is part of the Power Platform group or the Business Apps group. So Logic Apps is infrastructure or iPaaS offering, whereas Power Automate is a SaaS offering. And the way the licensing works for Logic App is it based on pay as per the usage or pretty identical to how the Azure works, whereas Power Automate is subscription based. The target audience for Logic Apps is IT professional and it's built for real life scenarios. Whereas Power Automate gives us the subset of Logic Apps, or rather I say Microsoft Flow gives us the subset of Logic Apps, and it's built more for the power user scenarios. If you are familiar with SharePoint, then Logic App does not have a direct integration with SharePoint modern SharePoint list and libraries. Whereas if you go to modern SharePoint list or libraries now in SharePoint Online, then you'll see a direct integration between modern SharePoint list and libraries and Power Automate. So when it comes to Logic Apps, we can only create Logic Apps, whereas under Power Automate, we have Microsoft Flow, or now it calls a Cloud Flow. We can have business process flows, we can create UI flow, and we can also have Power Automate desktop. The run duration. So the maximum run duration for Logic Apps is 90 days. Again, to get the 90-day run duration, you had to work with Microsoft to get that for in your subscription. Whereas the maximum run duration for Microsoft Flow is 30 days, and there is no way to bypass that. When it comes to the application lifecycle management, there is a really good integration story available with Logic Apps. As I mentioned, it's a part of Azure Group. So Logic App has very seamless integration with Azure DevOps, source control, support, automation, and manageability in Azure Resource Manager. Whereas when it comes to application lifecycle management, we can design and test in non-production environment and then promote to the production when they are ready. However, if you compare these two, then the story when it comes to the application lifecycle management is not that really fully baked in Microsoft Flow. You had to do some additional steps. It's not as seamless as what you get with Logic Apps. There is a PowerShell commandlets module available for Logic Apps. You had to basically get this module to use PowerShell to manage Logic Apps, and this is the link where you can go. When it comes to the Power Automate or Microsoft Flow, you have two models available. One is for the administration and one is for the makers. And this is the link where you can go and get this commandlets or PowerShell modules. Now let's take a look at the trigger. When it comes to Logic Apps, we can start a Logic App on manually. We can same kind of trigger is also available with Microsoft Flow. We can start Logic App on events like created, updated, or deleted. whereas the same kind of trigger also available with Microsoft Flow. We can run Logic App on schedule, same with the Microsoft Flow. However, Microsoft Flow has additional trigger which is not available with Logic App. The trigger is called location based trigger. That means you can trigger a flow based on a location. There are a lot of interesting scenarios you can cover, so I definitely recommend you to check the documentation on location based trigger, which is available in Microsoft Flow only. When it comes to the setup and installation, to create the Logic apps, you need a modern browser, and also in the designer, the code view is also available. When it comes to the Microsoft Flow, we can only use modern browser. The support for Visual Studio, support for development for Visual Studio is only available with Logic apps. Unfortunately, that support is not available with Microsoft Flow right now. So as I mentioned, when it comes to Logic app, there is no inbuilt SharePoint flows or workflows available. That means if I have to add any kind of automation using Logic apps in SharePoint, I have to first go to Logic App Designer, configure my connection or configure my connector over there with SharePoint, and then start implementing my automation. Whereas if I go to Microsoft Flow, if I had to use Microsoft Flow, I can start in both location. I can start in Microsoft Flow UI, and then there I can configure the connector to SharePoint and then start implementing the automation. Or I can also go to the modern SharePoint list and libraries, and in their toolbar or in the ribbon, I get the option of creating the flow for that list or library. And this is what I was talking about. Like if you open a SharePoint a list in modern experience, there you will see this option where you click on a flow or Power Automate, and then you can start creating the flows right from the SharePoint UI. When it comes to the on-premise gateway, so Logic Apps has support for on-premise connectors, for example, SharePoint or SQL. Same kind of on-premise connectors are also available with Microsoft Flow as well. However, there is a one caveat. If you are using any on-premise data via on-premise gateway in Logic Apps, there is no additional license required. Whereas if you are trying to use Microsoft Flow with on-premise data, you need the premium license. Now let's take a look at the pricing, like what's the major difference between the pricing. So as I mentioned, Logic Apps is more as a pay-as-you-go, and Power Automate is subscription based, and there are multiple ways how you can get Power Automate license. You can get Power Automate license through Dynamics 365 subscription. You can get Power Automate license through Microsoft 365 subscription, or you can also sign up for Power Automate license directly as well. One of the key things that you have to take into consideration is when it comes to Power Automate, and if you are getting the Power Automate or if you're accessing Power Automate via Microsoft 365 license, then the HTTP action and the HTTP trigger, those are a premium feature. That means if you are using Power Automate via Microsoft 365 license, and if you would like to use HTTP action, which is used to call web services or REST APIs, then you need to have a premium license, and that license can be per app basis or per user basis. That's not the case with Logic App, since everything is pay as you go. So the HTTP action or HTTP trigger is not a premium trigger in Logic Apps. And when it comes to as I mentioned, Power Automate is built on the top of Logic Apps. So there is a really good story available where if you have started creating an automation using Power Automate, and then suddenly you realize that you need to use some actions which are premium actions, then you can either sign up for the premium options in Power Automate, or you can convert your flow into a Logic app. And there is a really good option available. You just have to open the flow in the edit mode, and there you will see, or you have to go to the flow details page, and there you'll get this option under export, where you can export the flow as a Logic app template. And then once that template is available, you can go to the Azure portal and deploy that flow as a Logic app. However, If any corresponding action is not available in Logic App, then you have to basically remove that option action and configure a new action. And similarly, you have to also configure all the connections that you are using in Microsoft Flow. So if you have to integrate Logic Apps and Microsoft Flow, let's say you had to call Logic App from Microsoft Flow or Microsoft Flow from Logic App, like how is the story available to us? So when it comes to Logic App, we can call a flow from a Logic App using HTTP action. Same thing we can do. We can call a Logic App from a Microsoft Flow using HTTP action. Or we can export a flow and deploy it as a Logic App if you had to do integration between Flow or Logic App. However, keep in mind, if you are using Microsoft Flow or Power Automate via Microsoft 365 license, then HTTP trigger or HTTP action is a premium action. Now let's see how is the story with Power Virtual Agent. Now Power Virtual Agent is the newest member of the Power Platform family, and we can use Power Virtual Agent to create intelligent chatbots. So if you have to call Logic Apps from Power Virtual Agent, the way we can do it right now is you have to first trigger or call a flow from Power Virtual Agent, and from that flow then you can call a Logic App. Whereas we can trigger a flow directly from the Power Virtual Agent, so that story is fully baked. The reason for that is both Microsoft Flow and Power Virtual Agent are part of the Power Platform family. That's why you'll see there is a seamless integration. Whereas Logic Apps is part of the Azure family, so you will not see that seamless integration right now. It may get added in future, but right now the seamless integration is only available with Microsoft Flow and Power Virtual Agent. Now, if you ask me, and if I had to compare the Logic Apps and Microsoft Flow, then I can compare when it comes to comparing these two products on different criteria. This is how I can do it. Like when it comes to licensing, Logic Apps is a little bit convenient because everything is pay as you go, so you can quickly open the pricing calculator in Azure and quickly find out how much it's going to cost to you depending on the usage and depending on how frequently your Logic App will run. Whereas when it comes to the licensing and Microsoft Flow, the licensing is a little bit complicated, and surprise, surprise, that's the case with most of the Microsoft product, especially if the product is subscription based. When it comes to the personal automation, Microsoft Flow is really good. Like if you have not heard about Microsoft Flow, or this is the first time you're hearing it, Microsoft Flow also comes with a free version. And you can use that free version if you just have a Microsoft account, like a live.com account or hotmail.com account or msn.com account. So I highly recommend that you try out, because there are a lot of scenarios related to personal automation that we can do for free using Microsoft Flow. When it comes to the power user friendly, Logic Apps are not that power user friendly. The reason is you have to go to the Azure portal. And there are a lot of steps you have to take before you can start creating to create a Logic App. And for power users, sometimes the Azure portal may be a little bit overwhelming. Whereas when it comes to Microsoft Flow or Power Automate, they are much more power user friendly. When it comes to the developer friendly, Logic Apps wins heads down here, or hands down here, because there is a really good integration story available with application lifecycle management and other Azure resources or services. When it comes to Power Automate or Microsoft Flow and the developer story is not that fully baked yet, and I know Microsoft's Power Platform team is working hard to make that story really good. When it comes to the integration with third-party products, both products are really good. So overall, I think both products has their own plus and minus, and depending on the situation or scenario, we should consider both. If someone asks me today which product or service I will use first, then my answer will be always I'll be wearing my consultant hat, and my answer will be it depends. So my first question will be, do I have the Microsoft Power Automate or Microsoft Flow available as part of either Dynamics 365 license or Microsoft 365 license? If the answer is yes, then I will start try to implement my automation using Microsoft Flow, because I'm already paying for that service as part of either Dynamics 65 license or Power Microsoft 65 license. So that means this product is available to me as part of the bundle subscription. And that means it is free. So I will basically try to use Microsoft Flow first. And if there is an advanced scenario that I cannot do with Microsoft Flow, then I will consider Logic App, because remember, even if Logic Apps are cheaper, it's still you have to pay based on your consumption. That means at the end of the month, you'll still get some small bill for usage of the Logic Apps. Whereas when it comes to Microsoft Flow, since it's a subscription base and a lot of times it's already covered or bundled with Microsoft 65 or Dynamics 65 license, you basically use Microsoft Flow for free. Now let me show you the demo of both Power Automate or Microsoft Flow and the Logic Apps. So what I will do is I have created a similar Power Automate or Logic App. The purpose of this Logic App and Power Automate is basically whenever a user submit a request to create a new team, the request goes through an approval. And if the request gets approved, then we use Microsoft Graph API to create a new team. Now I'll quickly show you how we can implement the same business logic using Power Automate as well as a Logic App. So first I have is the Power Automate, where this is the flow I have created. So let me quickly go to edit here. And what I will do is I have the same similar automation implemented using the Logic App. And the reason I have this side by side, just to show you how exactly the UI looks like. So on the left hand side, we have the Power Automate. On the right hand side, we have the Microsoft Azure. I have created a Logic App. So let me quickly edit here and show you the designer of both. So on the left hand side, we already have the flow open in the designer. Now the same thing we will be doing with the Logic App as well. If you can see here, I have opened the Power Automate and Logic App side by side, and I have implemented similar automation. And if you look at the designer, the look and feel and everything is pretty much the same. The reason is Power Automate is built on the top of Logic Apps, so the designer it uses is similar as the designer that we get with the Logic App. Only difference is in Logic Apps we also get a code view. So if I click on the code view, then I can see the same implementation in the form of a JSON, and I can always go back to the designer view as well. So the implementation is very straightforward. I have a like trigger for the SharePoint here in the both Flow as well as Logic App, where whenever a request gets submitted in this particular list, the Logic Apps gets triggered. Here in Power Automate or Flow, whenever a request gets submitted in this same list, it gets triggered. Then we go through a bunch of initialization steps, where if you're familiar with how the Microsoft Graph API work, then we basically had to register an app in Azure AD. We need to get the application ID, the directory ID, and the combination of either or a client secret or the certificate based authentication. And once we have that, then we can make the call to the Graph API. So we're basically going through the initialization step. And if you're not familiar with Microsoft Graph API, or if you're not familiar with how we can register an app in Azure AD, don't worry. The important point I would like to show you here is how similar the designer is for Microsoft Flow and Logic App. And if I go down, the implementation is pretty much identical except few steps, where I have the scenario where what kind of automation scenario I'm using. If it's Microsoft Flow, then it's good. Then go with the approval that we get with Flow. If it's Logic App, then go with the email-based approval. So this is the main difference that you will see in this implementation, where this approval which comes with Flow is not available in Logic Apps. That's why we had to go with a different kind of approval called email approval. And the user experience that you get when it comes to the approval is different. Apart from that, the rest of the business logic, like calling the Graph API using the HTTP action, and the usage of that HTTP action is pretty much the identical when it comes to the flow and the logic app. Now what I will do next is I will submit two requests to create the team. For the first request, we will use the Power Automate or Microsoft Flow, and for the second request, we will be using a Logic app. The reason I'm doing this, I would like to show you how exactly the experience is when it comes to the approvals in Microsoft Flow as well as compared to the approvals in a Logic app. So let's first go ahead and create the request. Again, I'm using SharePoint as a trigger here, but you can use any other data source for this one. Like if you can use Microsoft Office 365 forms, you can use Power App, or you can use any other form built using custom code. The most important thing is where exactly the data going to get stored once you submit the request, and there we and that location of the data is where we will be assigning our trigger to. So in this case, I'll be submitting this form, and all the data will get submitted, will get stored in SharePoint, and that's where my trigger is assigned to both Flow and Logic app. So let's call it as net core conf 2021, and its purpose is for this one, and the department here let's select as the marketing, and the automation scenario here I will be selecting as Flow. Again, you don't have to select this. This just a title and purpose is fine, and the department is fine, but this is just to differentiate or just to tell Microsoft Flow, okay, for this team use Microsoft Flow, for the next form we'll be submitting we'll be using Microsoft Logic app. So let's click save here, and now let's submit another request here where we'll be using Logic app for the automation. So let's call it as net core conf 2021, and the department here let's call it as the sales, and the scenario I'll be selecting is a Logic app, and let's save this. Now what will happen is once these two requests are submitted, both the Logic app and Flow will trigger, and depending on what kind of automation scenario we have selected, the approval will either happen via Microsoft Flow or via Logic app. As you can see here, the flow for both the request got started. The first one got ended because the latest one got ended because we used the automation scenario as Logic app, and that's why it ended. But the first one where we use the automation scenario as Microsoft Flow is running, and right now it has assigned the approval task. Now when it comes to the Microsoft Flow, there are two ways you can take the action on the approvals. In the Microsoft Flow UI, you can expand the action items here, and you can click on the approvals, and under approvals you can see all the approvals that are assigned to you. Or the second method is you can also check your email. In the inbox you will get the message to approve that something is waiting for your approval. So this is the team we submitted. Let me open this request, review it, and if everything looks good, then I will approve it. So everything looks good here. So what I will do is I will click approve, and let's add some comment, and then click confirm. So if the implementation of the flow is right, then what will happen is this flow will proceed. It will use Microsoft Graph API and will provision a new team for us. So let's see if that's happening or not. So looks like this one is succeeded. So if I go to my Teams UI and if I refresh this, then I should see a new team with we just submitted. As you can see, I have opened my Microsoft Teams here, and here you see this marketing net core conf 2021 team got created. The reason I have marketing in the beginning because inside my graph API call, I'm passing the combination of department and the name of the team to create a new team. Now let's take a look how this is implemented, or how the user experience will be when it comes to the approvals in Logic App. As you can see here, there are two instances of the Logic App that ran because we submitted two requests. The first request was we use the automation scenario as Microsoft Flow. So this one got successfully finished. The second one is still running because it's waiting for the approval. Now, since the approval that we get with Microsoft Flow is not available with Logic App, here we have used different kind of approval called email approval. So we had to basically open the inbox, and then there we had to take the action on the approval task. As you can see here, I got an email, and this email has been generated by the Logic App, and this email is for the approval. So I'm getting the information that, hey, this a new team is submitted for your approval, whether you approve or reject it. So here I'll be going ahead and click approve. And if everything works fine, then what will happen is a new team will get created via Logic App. And to create that team, the Logic App will be using the Microsoft Graph API. As you can see here, this particular Logic App is completed successfully. It took like around 5 minutes. The reason for the 5 minutes is the delay that happened when the approval task got assigned and when we actually took action on that task via email. Now let's get back to the Teams UI and see if our team got created by Logic App or not. So here I'm in the Teams UI and I can see here this particular team, Sales Netcore Conf 2021 got created, and this one got created by the Logic App. So this is how we just now we saw how similar it is, the experience when it comes to using Microsoft Flow and Logic App, and how similar the designer is. And there will be some differences where some actions may not be available in one product versus another. So now let's take a look at some of the best practices. Now the best practices are pretty identical for both Microsoft Flow as well as Logic App. So for example, for Microsoft Flow, the naming convention is very important. So make sure you have a proper naming convention. You can use any naming conventions of your choice, but make sure you stick to that so that it's easier for you to easily identify what's the purpose of the flow is and what are some of the triggers there. So what I typically do is, if I had to create a flow, I have a fixed set of naming convention that I use. I always start the name of the flow with the connector that I'm using, and then the other information. For example, if I'm associating a flow with a SharePoint list, then I start with SP for SharePoint as a connector. Then I specify the name of the list, name of the site, name of the list and library, and what's the purpose of the flow. Again, you can come up with your own naming convention, but having a naming convention will help you in a long way. Also name the actions inside the flow. Same is the case with Logic Apps. If you are using the same action multiple times, then properly name it so you know which action is for what, and what does that I mean by that. So here in this flow, I have initialized 3 variables, and each variable I have named the action. And the way to do that, the name action is, you just click on rename here, click on the 3 dots on the action, click on rename, and then you can start add some additional information there. So now look at it like how I have 3 different variables, and by just looking at the description or name of the action, I know which particular variable I'm assigning to and what I'm doing here. The third one is important, add the owners. You would like to make sure if you are creating any flow, and if this flow is for your work and not for personal automation, then make sure you add at least one more owner and convert that flow to a team flow. Because if you, for some reason, if you're not available or if you're not in the office, then the other owners can take action on your behalf, or they can update the flow, or they can make some changes to it. In case if you forget to add additional owners and if you're on vacation, then only the tenant admin can then take control of your flow and then do necessary changes. Again, depending on your organization, depending on organization policy, that may be easy or that may be very, very difficult task. So it's always a good practice that if you are using any flow for work, make sure you add additional owners and convert that to a team flow. Add comments because adding comments will definitely help you to recollect what you have done, and you can leave a good notes for the other team members who may be maintaining your flow after 6 months. I personally use comments a lot because I normally forget what kind of business logic I was implementing and what way I was thinking. So leaving comments will definitely help me to recollect my memory if I revisit that flow after 6 months. Make sure you specify appropriate condition for trigger. This will help you to avoid infinite loop. And if possible, instead of writing a really big flow, make sure you break down that into multiple flows. There is a concept of parent-child flow available in Microsoft Flow. You can definitely check that out. And also, if you have like let's say 10 small flow as compared to 10 one big flow, it also helps you in development and maintenance. Like development and maintenance will be easy if you have multiple flows as compared to just one big flow. And again, remember the maximum duration of a flow or maximum duration of running of a flow is 30 days. Now, what does that mean is if an instance of a flow starts today, which is 25th of February, then that flow has next 30 days to finish or execute. For example, if the flow has approval steps in it, let's say you have 4 approval steps and each approver is taking 7 days to approve it, by the time the request goes to the 4th approver, the flow may have already ended because it already ran for 30 days. So that's like one of the key limitations that you always have to keep in mind when you are architecting your flow solutions. And this is true for any product you are using for automation. It doesn't matter if you're using Logic Apps or you're using Flow or let's say any third-party product. Always have a flowchart handy, and for that you can use Microsoft Flow, which is recommended product. But again, this product is a licensed product. You can also use pen and paper. You can also draw, let's say, the flowchart on a whiteboard or a piece of paper. Take the picture of that and store that so that you can refer it later. The Logic Apps best practices are pretty identical, so I'm not going to cover that, but you can refer to this real quick. Now, with that, let's say if you are not familiar with Microsoft Flow or you just heard about it, but you have never played with it, then how you can get the access to it. So there is a really good program available from Microsoft called Microsoft 365 Developer Program, where you go to this link, you sign up for that program, and once you sign up, you get a personal Microsoft 365 subscription with E5 license. Now, E5 is the highest level of license that is available in Microsoft 365. This tenant comes with 25 users. It is valid for 90 days. And if you are using this tenant for personal training and development, Microsoft will graciously increase your trial period for additional 90 days. And they will keep on continuing doing it as long as this program is active and you are using this tenant for personal training and development. I am personally using the tenant via this program from last 1.5 years. So you can see as long as this program is active and you're using this tenant only for training and development, you can pretty much keep using this tenant for long time. You can also sign up for the free trial as well. However, when you sign up for free trial by going to products.office.com, you have to use your credit card. Now, to use Logic Apps, you need access to Azure. And let's say if you are familiar with Power Automate, but you're not familiar with Logic Apps, then how you can get your personal Azure subscription so you can play with Logic Apps. So there are multiple ways. My recommended way is if you have MSDN subscription, then get the Azure credits through your MSDN subscription. And the way to do that is go to your MSDN portal and look for the Azure credits. Depending on what kind of subscription you have, the amount of credit that available to you per month varies. But this is a really good way to get your personal Azure subscription without using a credit card. So let's say, for example, if you're getting $150 credit per month, and somehow you exhaust that credit in the first 10 days, then what happens is your subscription will be deactivated for 20 days. However, once the new month first day on the new first day of the next month, automatically you get $150 credit, and that you can use in the next 30 days. So this is a really good way to try out different features without having to worry about the credit card bill, or without having to worry about going like having overcharges. You can also sign up for free trial by going to azure.microsoft.com, and depending on your country, depending on you may be getting some fixed credits that you can use within a specific amount of time. However, to sign up for this, you need a credit card. There is another program from Microsoft called Microsoft Imagine. It used to call DreamSpark before, where you don't need a credit card. All you need is valid.edu account from a participating school or institution. And if that school or institution is participating in Microsoft Imagine program, you may get a free Azure subscription with limited feature set without having to use a credit card. So hopefully the contents we covered today made you familiar with the key differences between Power Automate and Logic App. And if you don't have access to Power Platform, or if you don't have access to Microsoft 365 and you would like to get your hands dirty, definitely check out Microsoft 365 Developer Program. So these are the topics we covered today. We talked about Microsoft Power Automate, Logic Apps. What are some of the key differences between those two? We talked about best practices, key takeaways, and we had demos as well. So with that, I would like to thank the organizers for organizing this amazing event. Definitely check out the sponsors. And these are my contact details. If you have any questions in future, feel free to reach out to me via email. I'm also available on LinkedIn and Twitter. With that, thank you very much for coming. Stay safe, stay healthy. Bye-bye.